Hi, and once again, welcome to our blog. I am Jim Cuervo, Senior Trainer here at Digital Drafting Systems. This is our third installment in our Revit to 3D Max and Arnold workflow, Part 3, Materials. Although I have found that the material imported from Revit works well with the Arnold render, I do prefer to use the Arnold materials. The reason for this is that, generally speaking, using the render engine's native materials, the render engine then seems to run faster, but I let you be the judge of that. For the sake of time, I have already created and assigned most of the materials and left some to create so you can all see the process. Shall we all get started? Let's first add a distant light for a little more emphasis on sun location. So, first thing, let's go ahead and close the material editor here. And let's go to the top view in order for us to identify the position of our sun. Now that we've done that, we will come over here to the Create, go to Lights, make sure it's Arnold is selected, Arnold Light. For the setup here in Shape, Emit light from is not a point, it is going to be a distant light. Okay, and I'm going to be placing my distant lights here and I'm going to point it that way. Okay, let's go into the front view to see where that light is, and we see that the light is a little bit on the low side, so we'll grab it and we'll give it an angle here. Very well. With that done, let's go ahead back to camera, which would be the physical camera here, back to where we want it to be, and let's go ahead and do a quick render. Come over here and make sure that our setup is continuing. Arnold, yes, okay, everything stays the same. We will be looking at this later in another blog. Let's go ahead and hit the render and see what we got. Very well, this looks pretty good. We seem to have a much better defined light source at this point, other than just ambient. That very first light source that we placed at the beginning of the blog was in fact an ambience light, and this one is a direct light. Basically, with this I am simulating the sun position. Very well, let's get going with materials. The first material that we will be creating is the material for the glass. Okay, and the reason why I'm starting with glass is because I want to remind you of something that we did earlier. So let's go ahead and close these things out here. Let's go ahead and call the material editor here. Let's go ahead and get rid of this stuff here. And let's go ahead and select the glass material that's there. Let's find out what it is. So we'll go to the Pick Material from Object, pick on that, and we see that this is a physical material. The previous render didn't look bad, but I think we can do not necessarily better in the look of it, but definitely better in the actual render time. So let's go ahead and first things first, let's just make this a little bit bigger. It's kind of small, so it's kind of hard to see. And let's get this way, and we'll say that we want to select by material. And here it is, it's geometry, here it is. Just make sure that it's all there. Let's go ahead and select. Okay, it's not doing it, so we'll do it physically. It's just a little bit of glass, so we'll select this and shift and select that. Just isolating the particular glass panels that we want. We will now, here in the material editor, go right click in the materials. We will go to the Arnold materials, surfaces, and select the standard surface. Very well, with this in mind, now we will go ahead and say that now that these items are selected, we know that the material that these items have assigned to it is this glass physical material. We know because of these little white corners here on the sample. And then what we'll do is we'll select the new material, call this one Arnold. Well, let's use caps here for this. Say Arnold dash and then lowercase glass, just to identify it as something that created new for us. And let's go ahead and then assign it to the objects that are selected. Excellent. You'll notice that it went gray, not a problem. That will come over here. We'll leave the color as white, maybe a little tint of blue in a few moments, but let's go ahead and see how we can actually make this translucent. The other thing that we need to also remember is that we needed to do something at the beginning in order to allow the glass to go to, rather not the glass, but the light to come through. And that was with the Arnold properties. We went to added the modifier. Then we came over to general and deselected opaque. You need to do that in order for the glass to be transparent. So now that the glass is transparent, we need to make the material transparent by selecting the material, Arnold glass, which is the one that we assigned here. We go over here to transmission. Transparency is transmission in Arnold. So I'll go ahead and make this 100%. Okay. It shows it here on the sample, but it doesn't show it here, which is fine. Okay, there is no metalness to this. The specular is set to 1. Yeah, well, let's leave it there. The color is set to white, and we said we might want to add a slight blue tint to it. So let's go ahead and do the blues here, and we'll go ahead and give it a slight bit of a tint there. Now this still seems a little gray, so let's move it over to more towards this blue side here. Okay, that's a little bit better, just a little bit of a tint. We'll say okay to that. Let's go ahead and minimize this and do a quick test render and see what it looks like. We call the render engine, say render, and let's let it render for a couple of moments and we'll do a comparison. As we can see, the glass seems a bit like frosted glass more than anything. So there is a way to fix that. Let's go ahead and explore that. First, let's close these items here. Let's recall our material editor. Here it is. And what we need to do in order to get rid of that fuzziness or that blurriness is really in here in the specular level. The specular level is nice and high, but it's rough. We know that glass is smooth, so there is no roughness here. Okay, with that done, I also come over here, and usually this is on. I will take that inner reflections off, only because it's a thin glass. I don't have anything to reflect through it other than just letting the light pass through it. So I'll just go ahead and take off the internal reflections. With that done, then we'll go ahead and close this again, and we'll come over here to the render engine, recall it, and say render again so we can see what the effects are. Very well, this looks much better. If we compare it to the previous one, we remember that the glass was very fuzzy or blurry, and making it look more like sandblasted. In this way, we are now much more assured to be able to see clearly what is outside of this particular scene. Very well, let's move on to creating the material for the carpet and the exterior. Okay, let's do that by making our first statement. We had gone ahead and mixed, or rather combined, the floor here, okay, separating the exterior from the interior for materials. So we have to now create a multi-sub-object materials that would be assigned to the particular slots that would be then attached to the particular surfaces. The interior surface here plus the attached steps that are here to that surface are material ID number 2. And the exterior, being this piece right here, is concrete material number 1. Let's go ahead and create that material. Let's close here and here. We'll recall our material editor. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. Actually, we don't need this. We can delete them. By deleting them here from the slate material editor does not mean that we're getting rid of it from the scene. It just means we're not seeing it here in the editor. So let's go ahead now and create a right click here, materials general, and we have a multi-sub object. This is our starting point. we'll go ahead and convert this into a set number of 2. Okay, and let's zoom in a little bit. Right click again, go to Materials, Arnold, Surface, Standard Surface. Here is Standard Surface. What we'll do then is attach this one to material number 2, which will start with the carpet inside, right? And we'll call this material Arnold Carpet. Oops, not like that. I want capital Arnold and carpet in lowercase for easy identification. That's created by me. I shall then now go to the material slate editor again and right click, materials, maps, general, bitmap. Okay, and here in this item I will select one specific material that is going to be this one. This is the surface of our carpet, and say open that. Okay, once that's done, we'll call this one carpet. Okay, and I don't do caps on this because I need to identify this as a material that is influencing the Arnold. So I'll go ahead and connect the carpet to the base color, just like that. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and take this one and copy it by hitting the shift key and moving it. Okay, and then we'll call this one carpet dash bump. And here we'll go ahead into the bitmap selector here and select our carpet bump, which is this one, and we'll say open that up. Okay, this one for the Arnold materials, for a bump you need to put it in the normals right there. Okay, that emphasizes bumping. Then because it is a carpet, okay, we need to make sure that there is no specular on it. Okay, 0 specular, no internal reflections. This helps, remember, with the render time. Okay, there is no transmission. There is one more thing that needs to be done in order to see the bump maps a lot more realistically inside the 3D Studio Max, and it's this. Let's go ahead and move this over and select the item here again. Now this is the floor. Okay, I'm going to say that the whole thing, okay, is going to receive an Arnold's properties. Okay, and the Arnold's properties, we will go down to the displacement and enable it. Now here's the important part. What I need to do in order for this to look a lot better is I need to take this bitmap here, that is the bump map, and I need to attach it to here. So I do that by just grabbing it with the left mouse button here and bringing it to here and instance and OK. So now this bump map has been assigned to this carpet right here. Okay, and so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and now create our concrete by saying right click here, materials again, Arnold, surface, standard surface. Okay, we'll select that and we'll call this one Arnold dash concrete. And as far as the materials, we shall do the same thing as we did earlier. Right click here, go to maps, generals, bitmap, select the concrete that I want, which is that one, say OK to that, and connect it directly to the base color here. Okay, then we go back to the material itself in here and we get rid of the specularity and make it down to almost nothing. And what we'll also do, because if you look, it's a little bit high definition as far as the reflection is concerned, so I need to make it a little rougher, so I'll go ahead and have that focal point be a lot softer. Okay, maybe a little bit harder, and that's too much. Is right there, 0.42. That's excellent. Okay, I'm not going to put a bump map on it, and what I will do is I will go ahead and connect this to material level 1. And right there. Okay, so it's connected to material level 1. Excellent, excellent, excellent. One last thing to do before we do a little test render. Let's go ahead and close this out. Okay, and here, and once we have that all closed out, we will then take a look at our render. Okay, but before we do that, let's go ahead and add a mapping coordinate system, which is going to be a UVW map. Okay, and through trial and error, even if I set it to box, you'll notice that the numbers are quite large. Okay, so through trial and error, as I said earlier, I went ahead and figured out that it's better to put it at 40. Okay, as far as the tiling is concerned, not only in the length and width, but also the height. We have a height problem coming in here, so we better go ahead and assign that there also. Okay, once that's done, we just go ahead and select nothing. Okay, and let's go ahead and render this. Oh, this is on because, okay, that's off, and that's off, and okay. Excellent. Let's go ahead and render it. And let's see what happens. Excellent. That's looking pretty good. It's looking a little dark, but we're going to be handling that when we go into the render settings for the render engine. It's looking good. Let's continue on. Let's go ahead and bring back our material editor. Okay, in the material editor, we can now, maybe just for the sake of space, because I really don't have too much space here, considering I'm only using one monitor, I will go ahead and get rid of that. Right click and then go Materials, Arnold, Surface, Standard Surface. Okay, just to start. Very well. We will continue now with the sheets on the bed. Okay, which is done this way. We select it. Okay, once again, the bed has no specular level, so we take that off and we make sure that the roughness is set to off. It has no internal reflections, and it has no transmission. So all of this is set fine. Very well. And then all we have to do is just select the item and apply it by hitting this little button right here, which is Assign Material to Selection. With that done, let's continue on, and because we have that all set up, let's go ahead and create the material for the walls. Okay, so we will go ahead and first of all select the one that we just finished, and we'll go ahead and name that. Dash sheets. Okay, oops, no caps there. Sheets, okay, and click here, select it again. With the shift key and left button mouse, move it, and that will automatically create a copy. Select that copy, and let's call this one Arnold dash interior walls. Okay, it's basically the same setup, but we will do a couple of changes here. Okay, in the specular levels, we're going to switch this over to 1. So double click here so the sample's a little bit bigger, so you see the effects of these numbers changing. The specular, we're going to switch that to 1. Hit the enter key. Okay, and the roughness is going to be set to Okay, and why isn't that showing it? Well, the specular is going to set to 1 also. So it's the roughness, rather, for the specularity is going to be set to 1. Okay, so if we look at this, it's not 0.1, it should be 1. Okay, it's giving me a smoother layer of the color. Okay, and we will right click, because this does have a map. We'll go to Maps, General Bitmap, just like we've done before. As you can tell, it's pretty much repetitive. I have a white stucco right here. Let's say open that up. Okay, and then we'll take this item and we'll plug it into the normals, which is right there. Okay, very well. It's looking pretty decent. Let's go ahead and maybe well, we'll see what happens when we actually put it on the material, on the walls. Okay, so we've got the sheet set to the bed. Excellent. Let's go ahead and close this. This is getting a little bit in the way. Very well. And we'll start selecting now to assign to the white wall material. So we'll select these walls. Okay, excellent. And we'll go ahead and say assign to selected. Okay, we'll go ahead and select the top here also, and that also gets the same material, assign to selected. Okay, let's go ahead and select that and select this, and let's give it a UVW mapping just for the sake of argument, to make sure that everything is mapped properly onto that. It's going to be a box, and we're going to use, because it's smaller than the carpet, we used a 40. Let's go ahead and use a 15 on that. In the tiling, it's 15 size. And not only in the X and Y, but also in the Z, which is really what we're talking about right here. This is the translation here. Okay, once all of that is done, okay, we'll go ahead and come back to the render engine, invoke it, and tell it, let's see what it looks like now. Okay, that's looking pretty darn good. A little bit on the dark side, but before I touch on that, without necessarily going into the render engine, but more to the environmental exposure controls, what I will do for the last is going to add the material for the lights fixtures in here. We seem to have some sort of a light reflection. It seems to be reflecting off of something. We'll worry about that later. But for now, let's go ahead and work on the material for the light fixtures. And for that, we will first go to the top here. Okay, take off the items like the shaded mode and go into wireframe, and make sure that we're selecting just geometry here, and we'll select all of those. So now you'll notice, because we brought them in as one single object by material, it allows us to select them just by picking them. Very well, we've got that selected, and we will now go ahead and go to the material editor. And in the material editor, all of this stuff is assigned, so we don't have to actually hold it. Also, this is no longer attached to anything, so it'll actually be taken out of the data sets. Not for the data that is held in the file itself. So let's go ahead and delete those. Excellent. And we will now go ahead and say pick. Come in real close, and we'll pick this material right there. And it's telling us it's whoops, wrong material. So let's go ahead and just start from scratch. It's very simple. We'll go ahead and select that and take that. And we'll come over here, say materials, Arnold, and we'll call this surface, standard surface, just like we've been doing all along. Okay, we'll select this one, we'll call this one Arnold. Okay, light fixtures. Okay, and what we'll do is we will make this stay white, specular, no roughness on it, zero roughness. There is no internal reflect. There are no internal reflections. Rather, transmission is 0. Color is white. It's very good. Let's give it a little bit of a metalness here. Let's go ahead and give it a 0.5 of metalness, and that looks really nice. That's 0.25, I think, is better. Not too much metalness. That's good. And let's go ahead and then assign to selected. Very well. And we'll close that out. And let's go ahead back to camera, which is the physical camera here, and say OK. And we said that we were going to adjust the exposure here before we went into our render here and finalize the materials part. So we'll come over here to rendering, go to the environment. Will tell us to give us a little preview here. Okay, let's give it a chance to go ahead and give it to us. And it seems a little bit on the dark side. So what we'll do is we'll come over here to the physical camera exposure here in this section here and move it up to maybe a -5. And that's a little bright, so let's move it down to a -6. That looks way better. And so we'll close this, come back and invoke the render engine setup. It's going the way we wanted, so we'll say render, and let's see what happens. Excellent. As we can see, the slight manipulation of the environmental exposure controls helped a lot. The scene is looking a lot better. Yes, it's still very noisy. I get it. We're going to be dealing with that when we actually look at an abbreviated settings for Arnold render in the next chapter of our Revit to 3D Studio Max in Arnold workflow rendering engine settings. I hope you've enjoyed this particular blog on materials with Arnold inside Max from Revit. Till the next one, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe.